The wind, a rasping, chemical-laced exhalation of Turos, whipped across Aiden's faceplate as he knelt beside a cluster of bioluminescent fungi. His gloved hand, coated in a protective film of self-synthesized polymer, carefully plucked one of the pulsing caps. Turos, once a paradise, was now a poisoned Eden, choked by the blight, a sentient bioweapon left behind by a long-dead alien empire. Survival here meant wresting what little sustenance you could from this hostile world, and Aiden, the colony's bioalchemist, was its lifeline. Back in the relative safety of the hydroponics bay, carved deep into a mountainside, Aiden crushed the fungi, extracting enzymes that would purify the recycled water. Around him, the air thrummed with the life support systems he maintained, all jury-rigged, salvaged, and adapted. The constant struggle weighed heavily on him, a responsibility he carried alone. A shrill alarm cut through the hum. "Blight incursion, Sector 4, a robotic voice announced." Aiden sighed. Another day, another fight for survival. It was a cycle he longed to break, a cycle that kept him chained to Turos, years away from a home he barely remembered, a home that probably didn't even exist anymore. The evacuation was chaotic, a frantic rush through narrow tunnels as the ground trembled under the blight's advance. Aiden made sure the last of the children were ushered to safety before retreating himself. The tremors intensified, rocks raining down from the cavern ceiling. As he scrambled through a narrow passage, a flicker of iridescent light caught his eye. It was unlike any bioluminescence he'd seen on Turos. Curiosity, a dangerous luxury in this world, tugged at him. He cautiously approached the source of the light. It was her. Tall, slender, with skin that shimmered like captured starlight, shifting from a deep violet to a soft green as she watched him. Her segmented limbs ended in delicate, almost skeletal digits, each tipped with what looked like tiny, iridescent claws. She was Xylosan, a race rumored to roam the desolate plains of Turos. Rhea, he learned later, her name a whisper of wind and starlight. Fear warred with fascination. Could he trust her? Could he trust any being on this blighted world? Yet, in her alien eyes, he saw not hostility, but a mirroring curiosity. Her presence, so different, so utterly other, sparked a flicker of something long dormant within him, hope. Over the next few weeks, their paths continued to cross. Aiden, drawn to her enigmatic nature, would seek her out near the hidden oasis, a rare patch of land untouched by the blight. He shared his knowledge of the blight, his desperate search for a cure. Rhea, in turn, revealed the Xylosan understanding of Turos, their symbiotic relationship with the planet's intricate web of life. A connection, tentative and fragile, began to form between them, a bridge across the chasm of their different species. One day, as they sat by the oasis, Aiden gently reached out, his gloved hand hovering over Rhea's arm. He hesitated, unsure if his touch would be welcome or even safe. Her skin shimmered, a ripple of sapphire and emerald, as she tilted her head, a silent invitation. He brushed his fingers against her arm. Her skin felt surprisingly smooth, warm, and faintly electric. A jolt, not unpleasant, passed through him. In that touch, a new understanding bloomed, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that was slowly weaving itself between them. Aiden's heart, long hardened by the harsh realities of Turos, began to crack open. He found himself torn between his duty to his people, his dream of finding a way to restore Turos enough to allow a return to Earth, and the burgeoning feelings he harbored for Rhea. The choice seemed impossible. The blight, however, did not allow for much introspection. A massive attack, larger than anything they'd seen before, crippled the colony's main air purification system. Rhea, seeing the desperation in Aiden's eyes, disappeared into the toxic wilderness. He feared he'd frightened her away. But she returned hours later, carrying a cluster of strange, pulsating blossoms, a Xylosan antidote for the polluted air. It was a risky move, revealing a hidden source to the humans, a demonstration of trust that shook Aiden to his core. It was a choice, he knew, that could have consequences for her own people. Later, as the colony slowly recovered, Aiden made a decision. He abandoned the faint hope of ever returning to Earth. His home was here, on Turos, with the people he'd sworn to protect, and with the extraordinary being who had shown him a new way to see their poisoned world. He found Rhea by the oasis, the starlight reflected in her multifaceted eyes. He confessed his feelings, his words clumsy, inadequate. Her response was not a verbal affirmation, but a gentle intertwining of her delicate fingers with his gloved hand. It was enough. The oasis was a shimmering jewel in Terosa's blighted crown. Water, pure and sweet, trickled over moss-covered rocks, nourishing ferns and strange, luminous flowers. It was here, amidst this improbable sanctuary, that Aidan saw Rhea. He found her perched on a rock, her iridescent skin reflecting the dappled sunlight filtering through the dense canopy. He'd brought her a gift, a small, music-playing device salvaged from an old Earth probe, painstakingly repaired. He wasn't sure if she'd understand it, but he wanted to share something of his lost world with her. She accepted the device with a tilt of her head, her delicate fingers exploring its smooth surface. When the music began to play, a haunting melody from a long-dead composer, her skin shimmered with a kaleidoscope of colors. Aidan watched her, mesmerized. He'd lost his family during the initial blight attack on Earth's first colony on Tyros. He'd been a child then, his memories fragmented, blurred by trauma. Rhea's presence, her otherness, somehow soothed the ache of that loss, offering a strange, unexpected solace. "It's beautiful," Rhea whispered, her voice a melodic chime. "It speaks of longing." Aidan nodded, the word resonating deep within him. He longed for a life beyond the constant struggle for survival, longed for a connection he'd never thought possible on this poisoned world. He longed for Rhea. Their conversations, a mixture of halting words and intuitive gestures, deepened over the following days. Rhea spoke of the Xylosan philosophy of symbiosis, their deep connection to the planet's ecosystem. She confessed her own doubts, the guilt she felt for growing closer to a human, a species her people viewed with suspicion. The Xylosans were nomadic, their existence a delicate dance with the ravaged environment. Sharing their sanctuary with the humans was a risk, a betrayal of ancient traditions. "But I believe in you, Aidan," she said, her skin flashing a vibrant blue, the color of trust, he'd learned. "I believe you can heal this world." Her words both thrilled and terrified him. He wasn't sure he could live up to her faith. But the idea of healing Tyros, not just for his people, but for Rhea and her kind, ignited a new determination within him. Then came the day the blight encroached upon another Xylosan sanctuary, a hidden grove of bioluminescent trees vital to their survival. Aidan, driven by his growing feelings for Rhea and a desire to prove his commitment to her people, offered his help. He knew it was a dangerous gamble, exposing his bioalchemy to the Xylosan elders, but he couldn't stand by and watch Rhea's world crumble. He developed a specialized enzyme, tailored to the grove's unique ecosystem, capable of repelling the blight's advance. It was a risky procedure, untested, but it worked. The blight recoiled, its tendrils withdrawing from the sacred grove. The Xylosan elders, initially wary, regarded him with newfound respect. Rhea's iridescent skin glowed a soft rose, the color of affection. It was then, in that shared moment of triumph, that their hands touched for the first time. He'd been working beside her, adjusting the flow of the enzyme, when his gloved hand brushed against hers. He'd hesitated, a primal fear flickering within him. Would his touch harm her? But she didn't flinch. Her hand, delicate yet strong, remained beneath his. The contact sent a shiver down his spine, a strange, exhilarating mix of fear and desire. He gently intertwined his fingers with hers. Her skin felt cool, smooth, radiating a faint energy that seemed to resonate with his own. It was a turning point. He realized then that he couldn't go back. He'd always clung to the faint hope of returning to Earth, of rebuilding what he'd lost. But Tyros, blighted and broken as it was, had become his home. Rhea had become his home. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. The blight was still a threat, its sentience a terrifying enigma. The human colony remained wary of the Xylosans, their fear fueled by ignorance. And Aidan, caught between two worlds, knew he would face challenges he couldn't even imagine. But with Rhea beside him, hand in hand, he felt a flicker of hope. The music he'd shared with her echoed in his mind, a melody of longing and belonging, a testament to the enduring power of connection in a world ravaged by conflict. It was a fragile piece, a nascent love blooming in the heart of a poisoned Eden. But it was a start. The air in Aiden's makeshift lab, carved from the heart of the mountain, crackled with static. He'd been analyzing samples of the blight, the pulsating, iridescent slime that choked Turos, under his jury-rigged microscope. He discovered something disturbing, intricate patterns within the slime, almost like neural pathways. Could the blight be thinking? The thought chilled him. A sentient bio-weapon, constantly adapting, evolving. No wonder eradication attempts had failed. He shared his findings with the council, the weary faces of the colony's leaders illuminated by flickering emergency lights. Skepticism met his theory. Sentience? Aiden, you're pushing it, Elder Grey, his face lined with worry, said. We have enough to worry about without conjuring up ghosts in the slime. But the patterns, the adaptive responses, Aiden insisted, frustration bubbling up. It's learning. It's anticipating our every move. Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled. The alarm blared. Another blight incursion. This time, it was targeting their main food source, the hydroponics bay. Aiden's stomach clenched. If they lost that, they were doomed. Aiden, get to the west tunnel, Elder Grey barked. Set up a defensive line. We need your alchemy to hold them back. Aiden raced to the designated point, his mind whirling. He needed something potent, something that could disrupt the blight's adaptive mechanisms. He combined a concentrated fungal extract with a synthesized neurotoxin, a desperate gamble. As the first pulsating tendrils of the blight breached the tunnel, he unleashed his concoction. The effect was immediate. The blight recoiled, its iridescent surface dimming. He'd bought them time, but he knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The blight would adapt. It always did. He sought Rhea by the oasis, the only place where he felt a semblance of peace. She listened intently as he explained his discovery, her iridescent skin shifting from deep violet to worried green. The whispers of the blight, she murmured. My people have sensed it too. A growing darkness in the heart of Turos. He confessed his growing fear, his doubts about their ability to survive. She reached out, her delicate fingers brushing against his gloved hand. The touch, even through the protective barrier, sent a jolt through him. I believe in you, Aiden, she said, her voice a soft chime. You see what others cannot. You have the knowledge to heal this world. My people, we can help. He looked at her, struck by the conviction in her alien eyes. He knew her words came at a price. The Xylosans were wary of humans, their history fraught with misunderstanding and conflict. By aligning herself with him, Rhea was risking her standing within her own community. The next day, Aiden received a summons. The Xylosan elders requested his presence at their hidden village, deep within the toxic forest. He knew it was a dangerous gamble. He could be walking into a trap. But he also knew he couldn't refuse. He had to try to bridge the divide between their species. And, selfishly, he longed to see Rhea again. Before he left, Elder Grey pulled him aside. Be careful, Aiden, he said, his voice heavy with concern. The Xylosans are not to be trusted. They are not our allies. Remember your duty is to our people. Our future lies in finding a way back to Earth, not in forging alliances with aliens on a dying world. Aiden's heart ached. He knew Grey was right. The colony's dwindling resources wouldn't last much longer. Their only hope was to find a way to signal Earth, to plead for rescue. But he couldn't turn his back on Rhea, not now. He had to try. He journeyed into the toxic forest, a place the humans avoided. The air was thick with spores, the vegetation twisted and grotesque. He relied on Rhea's directions, whispered into his communicator, to navigate the treacherous terrain. When he finally reached the Xylosan village, a cluster of bioluminescent structures woven into the canopy of giant, fungal trees, he was greeted by a circle of elders, their iridescent skin flashing a multitude of colors. He presented his research, his theory about the blight sentience, his desperate search for a cure. The elders listened, their expressions unreadable. Then, one of them, taller than the rest, with skin that shimmered a deep indigo, spoke. "We know of the Blight's whispers," the elder said, his voice a deep rumble. "We have felt its growing darkness for generations. We have tried to contain it, to appease it, but it hungers for more. I believe we can stop it," Aidan said, his voice trembling with conviction. "But I need your help. I need your knowledge of this planet, of its ecosystems." A sudden tremor shook the forest. The ground beneath their feet began to crack. The Blight. It had found them. Panic erupted among the xylosounds. The elders turned to Aidan, their eyes wide with fear. Rhea stepped forward, her skin flashing a vibrant blue. "Aidan is right," she said, her voice clear and strong. "We must work together. I will show you the way." It was a bold move, a defiance of tradition. Several elders protested, their skin flashing angry red. But Rhea stood firm. She took Aidan's hand, her cool fingers intertwining with his. It was a public declaration of their alliance, a bridge built between two worlds. It was also the first time their bearskin had touched. A thrill, mixed with a strange apprehension, shot through Aidan. He didn't know if his touch, his human biology, would harm her. But she didn't flinch. Her hand remained steady in his. In that moment, as the Blight closed in, Aidan made a choice. He would stay. He would abandon his dream of returning to Earth. His home was here, on Turos, with the people he'd come to protect, and with the extraordinary being who'd shown him a new way to see their poisoned world. The path ahead would be dangerous, uncertain. But with Rhea beside him, he was ready to face whatever came. The music from the long-dead composer echoed in his mind, a melody of longing and belonging, a testament to the enduring power of connection in a world ravaged by conflict. It was a start. The Xylosan village, nestled within the glowing embrace of colossal fungal trees, hummed with a life alien yet strangely comforting. Aidan sat with Rhea and the elders, studying the intricate maps they had woven from bioluminescent vines, tracing the pathways of the Blight. Their understanding of Turos was so different from his, symbiotic and holistic. He saw the planet as a collection of resources to be exploited, they saw it as a living entity to be respected. This difference, he realized, was not a weakness, but a strength. Their combined knowledge, their distinct perspectives, might be the key to finding a cure. Rhea pointed to a node on the map, a pulsating crimson heart of Blight activity. "This is where the whispers are strongest," she said, her voice hushed. A place of corrupted growth, a wound in the heart of Turos. Aidan felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He recognized the location. It was dangerously close to the human colony. "We need to act quickly," he said, the urgency in his voice palpable. He proposed a daring plan, a joint expedition to the heart of the Blight, a combined team of humans and xylosans, to collect samples and study the Blight's adaptive mechanisms. The elders, however, were hesitant. "Such a collaboration has never been attempted," the indigo-skinned elder rumbled. "The risks are too great. Our people are not warriors." Rhea's skin flashed a defiant blue. "We are not warriors, but we are protectors of this world," she said, her voice unwavering. She turned to Aidan, her multicolored eyes locking with his. "I believe in you, Aidan. I believe this is the only way." Later, as they walked beneath the glowing canopy, Rhea confessed her fears. "My people do not understand," she whispered, her voice laced with guilt. "They fear your touch, your intentions. They believe I am betraying our traditions by aligning myself with you." Aidan took her hand, his gloved fingers gently squeezing hers. He knew his touch, his human biology, could potentially harm her. But she didn't pull away. Instead, her cool fingers intertwined with his. The contact, even through the protective barrier, sent a thrill through him, a spark of connection in this alien world. "I understand," he said softly. "My people are afraid too. They cling to the dream of returning to Earth, a dream I once shared. But now, my home is here, with you." Her iridescent skin shimmered with a soft rose hue, the color of affection, he'd learned. "Then we will face this together," she said, her voice firm. The expedition was fraught with danger. The air crackled with the blight's toxic energy, the vegetation twisted into grotesque shapes. Aiden and Rhea worked side by side, collecting samples, analyzing the blight's pulsating slime. He noticed she moved with a fluid grace, her segmented limbs adapting to the treacherous terrain with ease. He'd always been alone, burdened by the responsibility of keeping his colony alive. Now, for the first time, he felt a sense of shared purpose, a connection that transcended the chasm of their different species. As they ventured deeper into the corrupted zone, the blight seemed to sense their presence. The ground trembled, and a wave of pulsating tendrils surged towards them. Aiden pushed Rhea behind him, shielding her with his body. He unleashed a concentrated blast of his anti-blight compound, momentarily repelling the attack. But it was a losing battle. They were outnumbered, outmatched. Suddenly, a shrill cry pierced the air. One of the Xylosan scouts had been ensnared by the blight, its tendrils wrapping around his slender form. Rhea's skin flashed a desperate green. She lunged forward, ignoring Aiden's warning, her delicate fingers glowing with a strange energy. She touched the blight, channeling a wave of energy that seemed to disrupt its neural pathways. The tendrils recoiled, releasing the scout. Aiden watched in awe and fear. He'd never seen anything like it. It was a powerful display of Xylosan symbiosis, a dangerous gamble that could have cost Rhea her life. But it had worked. It had given them a chance. They retreated, carrying the injured scout, the blight's whispers growing louder, more menacing. Back in the relative safety of the Xylosan village, Aiden tended to the scout's wounds, using his bioalchemy to accelerate the healing process. He knew he couldn't stay. His people needed him. But he also knew he couldn't leave Rhea, not now. He found her by a shimmering pool, her iridescent skin reflecting the faint light filtering through the fungal canopy. He told her of his decision, his voice thick with emotion. He would abandon his dream of returning to Earth. His home was here, with her. She didn't respond with words, but with a gesture he now understood. She leaned forward, her delicate fingers gently tracing the lines of his face, her touch sending a shiver down his spine. It was a moment of profound intimacy, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between them, a bridge built across the divide of their different worlds. He knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. The blight was still a threat, their alliance fragile, their future uncertain. But as he looked into her multicolored eyes, he felt a flicker of hope, a nascent love blooming in the heart of a poisoned Eden. It was a start. The crimson node on the Xylosan bioluminescent map pulsed like a malevolent heart, radiating a threat that resonated deep within Aiden. Rhea's words echoed in his ears, a place of corrupted growth, a wound in the heart of Turos. It was a source of a rare enzyme, one he desperately needed to synthesize a counteragent to the blight. But it was located deep within blight territory, a suicide mission. The enzyme is vital, he explained to Rhea, tracing the pulsating node with a gloved finger. It's the missing piece, the catalyst that could neutralize the blight's adaptive mechanisms. He saw a flicker of doubt in her multifaceted eyes. She understood the risks. He'd been working tirelessly, incorporating Rhea's knowledge of Xylosan symbiosis into his bioalchemy. The idea was radical, to use a modified form of the Xylosan symbiotic connection with Turos to counteract the blight's relentless consumption. It was a desperate gamble, but their only hope. "I'll go," Rhea said, her voice resolute. "The pathway's unknown to my people. I can retrieve the enzyme." Aiden's heart clenched. He couldn't let her go alone. "No, we go together." The journey was harrowing. The air grew thick with blight spores, the landscape a twisted mockery of life. Rhea, despite her delicate frame, moved with surprising agility, her segmented limbs adapting to the treacherous terrain with an almost preternatural grace. He found himself constantly watching her, marveling at her resilience, her connection to this ravaged world. He'd spent so long focused on survival, on finding a way back to Earth, that he'd forgotten to appreciate the beauty that still existed on Turos, a beauty Rhea embodied. He thought of his parents, lost in the initial blight attack on the first human colony. He'd been a child then, clutching a music-playing device, the melody a haunting reminder of a life stolen. Rhea's presence, her alien beauty, somehow soothed that ancient ache, offering a strange, unexpected solace. They reached the source of the enzyme, a pulsating cavern bathed in an eerie crimson light. The air vibrated with the blight's toxic energy. Rhea hesitated, her skin flashing a worried green. "The whispers are strong here," she whispered. "Be careful, Aiden. This place, it corrupts." He nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He carefully extracted the enzyme, a viscous, glowing fluid, sealing it in a specially designed container. As he turned to leave, the ground beneath them trembled. The cavern walls began to pulsate, closing in on them. They were trapped. Rhea's skin flashed a brilliant blue, the color of trust, and a strange energy radiated from her delicate fingers. She touched the cavern wall, channeling a wave of energy that seemed to disrupt the blight's growth. A crack appeared in the pulsating wall, a narrow escape route. "Go," she urged, pushing him towards the opening. "I'll hold it back." He hesitated, torn between his own survival and her safety. He couldn't leave her. Not now. Not when he'd finally found someone worth fighting for. He grabbed her hand, pulling her with him through the narrow opening. It was the first time their bare skin had touched. Her hand felt cool, smooth, radiating a faint energy that resonated with his own. The contact sent a thrill through him, a spark of connection in this alien world. They stumbled out of the cavern, collapsing onto the blighted earth, gasping for air. He looked at her, his heart pounding, a mixture of fear and relief washing over him. He realized then that he couldn't go back. He'd always clung to the dream of returning to Earth, of rebuilding what he'd lost. But Turos, blighted and broken as it was, had become his home. Rhea had become his home. He gently intertwined his fingers with hers, his touch a silent promise. Back in the relative safety of the Xylosan village, Aiden worked feverishly, synthesizing the enzyme, preparing for a large-scale application of his symbiotic counteragent. He knew it was a risky move, potentially devastating if it failed. He sought Rhea's counsel, sharing his doubts. "It's a desperate gamble," he admitted, his voice heavy with apprehension. She listened patiently, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the flickering light of his lab. "But without risk, there is no hope," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "I believe in you, Aiden. I believe in us." Her words, her unwavering faith, gave him the strength he needed to continue. He was no longer working just for the survival of his colony. He was working for Rhea, for their shared future, for the possibility of a healed Turos, a world where humans and Xylosans could coexist in harmony. It was a dream, a fragile hope, but it was enough. He just hoped it wouldn't cost them everything. The heart of the blight pulsed with a sickening luminescence, a corrupted landscape of twisted, bioluminescent flora and pulsating, venomous fauna. Aiden and Rhea moved as one, their combined knowledge guiding them through the treacherous terrain. Aiden, clad in his protective suit, felt a strange sense of vulnerability, his technology a fragile barrier against Terosa's poisoned embrace. Rhea, however, seemed to thrive in this environment, her iridescent skin shifting and shimmering as she navigated the treacherous pathways. He marveled at her grace, her symbiotic connection to this ravaged world. Their mission was simple: retrieve a rare enzyme, vital to Aiden's plan to synthesize a counteragent to the blight. Yet, every rustle of the toxic foliage, every tremor of the blighted earth, amplified the tension between them. It wasn't just the physical danger. Aiden felt a growing unease, a sense of betrayal. Elder Grey's warning echoed in his mind, "Remember, your duty is to our people." He was risking his life, his colony's future, for a radical plan, for an alien he barely understood. And for what? For a love that felt as alien and dangerous as the world around them? Rhea sensed his inner turmoil. She paused, her multifaceted eyes searching his. "You doubt this path, Aiden?" she asked, her voice a melodic chime that resonated strangely in the toxic air. He hesitated, torn between his duty and his heart. He thought of the music he'd shared with her, a haunting melody from a lost world, a world he'd clung to for so long. He thought of his parents, their faces blurred by time and trauma, lost in the initial blight attack. Rhea's presence, her otherness, somehow soothed that ancient ache, offering a strange, unexpected solace. "I doubt myself," he admitted, his voice muffled by his respirator. "I doubt my ability to save my people, to heal this world." Her response was not words, but a touch. Her delicate, cool fingers brushed against his gloved hand. The contact, even through the protective barrier, sent a jolt through him. "You are not alone, Aiden," she whispered, her skin shimmering a vibrant blue, the color of trust. "I believe in you. I believe in us." Her faith, so unwavering, both humbled and terrified him. He knew she was risking everything by aligning herself with him, defying her people's ancient distrust of humans. He had to prove her right. He had to make this work, not just for his people, but for her, for the fragile hope of a future together. They pressed on, deeper into the heart of the Blight. The air grew heavy, the silence punctuated by the ominous pulsating of the corrupted landscape. They reached their destination, a pulsating cavern bathed in an eerie crimson light. The source of the enzyme. Rhea's skin flashed a warning green. "The whispers are strong here," she warned. "This place, it corrupts." Inside the cavern, Aiden carefully extracted the enzyme, a viscous, glowing fluid, sealing it in a specially designed container. As he turned to leave, the cavern walls began to pulsate, closing in on them. They were trapped. Rhea didn't hesitate. She touched the cavern wall, channeling a surge of energy that disrupted the Blight's growth, creating a narrow escape route. She pushed him towards the opening. "Go," she urged. "I'll hold it back." He refused to leave her. He grabbed her hand, pulling her with him through the narrow fissure. They tumbled out of the cavern, collapsing onto the blighted earth, gasping for air. As he looked into her multifaceted eyes, he knew he couldn't go back to the way things were. He had found something, someone, worth fighting for on this poisoned world. In that moment of shared danger, of intertwined hands, their bare skin touched for the first time. Her touch sent a thrill through him, a spark of connection that transcended the vastness of space, the chasm between their species. The journey back to the Xylosan village was fraught with danger. The Blight, enraged by their intrusion, pursued them relentlessly. Rhea, weakened by her exertion in the cavern, stumbled. Aiden caught her, his arms encircling her delicate frame. He felt a surge of protectiveness, a primal urge to shield her from harm. He knew then, with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul, that he couldn't leave Turos, not now. Not ever. His home wasn't a distant memory, a lost world. His home was here, with her. Back in the village, they faced a new challenge. The Xylosan elders, alarmed by Rhea's actions, condemned her alliance with a human. They feared Aiden's influence, his technology, his alien ways. Rhea, defiant, defended their collaboration. "He is not our enemy," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "He is the key to our survival." She turned to Aiden, her eyes blazing with a mixture of love and defiance. "Do it, Aiden. Show them. Heal our world." It was a turning point. He realized he had a choice to make. He could abandon his dream of returning to Earth, a dream he'd clung to for so long, or he could embrace a new future, a future with Rhea, a future where humans and Xylosans could forge a new path together. He chose Rhea. He began the process, releasing the synthesized counteragent into the ecosystem, a gamble that could save or destroy them all. The initial results were promising. The Blight recoiled, its pulsating tendrils withdrawing from the surrounding forest. But the victory was short-lived. The Blight, a sentient entity, adapted, evolving into a more aggressive, more virulent form. The battle for Turos had just begun. The air in Aiden's makeshift lab thrummed with the newly synthesized enzyme's luminescence. It pulsed with a life of its own, a vibrant green that mirrored the hope burgeoning in his chest. He'd done it. He'd combined his bioalchemy with Rhea's understanding of Xylosan symbiosis, creating a potential counteragent to the Blight. Now, the real test began. He explained the application process to the gathered humans and Xylosans, his voice resonating with a nervous energy. He saw skepticism etched on the faces of his own people, their fear palpable. Elder Grey stood at the front, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on Aidan with a mixture of apprehension and disapproval. He hadn't spoken to Aidan since their last argument, the rift between them widening with each passing day. Rhea, however, stood beside him, a pillar of unwavering support. Her iridescent skin shimmered with a soft blue, the color of trust. Her presence, her belief in him, bolstered his resolve. The application began. Aidan, assisted by Rhea and a team of Xylosan healers, released the enzyme into the ecosystem, a network of pulsating vines that connected the human colony to the surrounding forest. The initial results were dramatic. The blight, a pulsating, iridescent slime that choked the land, recoiled, its tendrils withdrawing from the treated areas. A collective gasp went through the crowd, a mixture of awe and relief. For the first time in generations, a patch of Turos was free from the blight's grasp. Aidan looked at Rhea, their eyes locking in a shared moment of triumph. But their victory was short-lived. The blight, a sentient entity, adapted. It evolved, its pulsating mass transforming into a more aggressive, more virulent form. It attacked with a ferocity they'd never seen before, targeting the Xylosan village, the heart of their symbiotic network. Chaos erupted. The ground trembled, the air thick with toxic spores. Aidan's heart pounded in his chest. He'd unleashed something terrible, something he couldn't control. He raced towards the village, Rhea by his side, their hands clasped tight. The touch, skin against skin, sent a jolt through him, a spark of connection in the midst of the unfolding catastrophe. The Xylosan village was under siege, the blight's tendrils tearing through the bioluminescent structures. Aidan and Rhea fought back-to-back, his bioalchemy and her symbiotic energy combining in a desperate defense. He saw fear in her multifaceted eyes, a flicker of doubt. He squeezed her hand, his touch a silent promise. He wouldn't let her down. He wouldn't let them down. He realized he had to make a choice. He could focus on protecting the human colony, retreating behind their technological defenses, abandoning the Xylosans to their fate. Or he could stay, fight alongside Rhea, risking everything to save the village, to honor the bond they'd forged. He chose Rhea. He unleashed a concentrated blast of his modified enzyme, targeting the heart of the blight's attack. It was a risky move, untested, potentially devastating. But it worked. The blight recoiled, its pulsating mass momentarily disrupted. It was a chance, a fleeting opportunity. "We need to sever the connection," Rhea shouted over the din of battle, her voice strained. "The vines, they're amplifying the blight's power. We have to cut them." He knew what she meant. The network of vines, once a source of healing, had become a conduit for the blight's corruption. But severing the connection meant sacrificing the human colony's lifeline to the Xylosan ecosystem, their only source of clean air and water. It meant abandoning any hope of returning to Earth. It meant choosing Turos, choosing Rhea, choosing a future he'd never imagined. He looked into her eyes, her iridescent skin shimmering with a desperate plea. He saw not just fear but determination, a belief in him that mirrored his own growing love for her. He made his choice. He severed the connection. The blight's attack faltered, its power diminished. The Xylosans, empowered by Rhea's leadership and Aidan's sacrifice, rallied, pushing back the encroaching darkness. The battle raged on, but the tide had turned. They had a chance. Later, as the dust settled, Aidan and Rhea stood amidst the wreckage of the village, their hands clasped tight. He'd abandoned his dream of returning home. He'd sacrificed his past for a future he couldn't even imagine. Yet, as he looked into Rhea's multicolored eyes, he felt a sense of peace he'd never known before. He was home. The blight's counterattack was relentless. Driven by Aidan's modified enzyme, it had evolved, becoming faster, stronger, more intelligent. The human colony, cut off from the Xylosan symbiotic network, was vulnerable. Their air purifiers strained, their hydroponics bay failing. Panic spread like a virus. Elder Grey confronted Aidan amidst the chaos. "You did this," he spat, his voice raw with fear. Your alien consort and your reckless experiments have doomed us all." Aiden's heart twisted. He'd hoped his sacrifice would unite their people, not divide them further. He saw the accusation in Gray's eyes, the betrayal. He'd abandoned the dream of returning to Earth, a dream Gray still clung to, for a future with Rhea, a future that now seemed impossibly bleak. He found Rhea in the medical bay, tending to injured xylosans. The attack had devastated the village, tearing through the bioluminescent structures, leaving a trail of destruction. Her iridescent skin shimmered with a kaleidoscope of emotions, grief, fear, and a resolute determination that mirrored his own. "We were wrong," she whispered, her voice laced with guilt. "My belief in you, it has cost my people dearly." He took her hand, his touch a silent apology, a reaffirmation of his commitment. He'd made his choice. He wouldn't abandon her, not now, not ever. "We'll find a way," he said, his voice firm, though his heart ached with uncertainty. He thought of the music he'd shared with her, the melody of longing and belonging. It had become their anthem, a symbol of their fragile hope in a world ravaged by conflict. He realized the flaw in his plan. The enzyme, designed to disrupt the blight's consumption, had inadvertently accelerated its evolution. He needed a new approach, a way to harness the blight's sentience, not just combat it. He shared his idea with Rhea, a desperate gamble, to offer the blight a new source of sustenance, a controlled environment where it could thrive without consuming Turos. Rhea's multifaceted eyes widened. "You would feed it?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. The xylosans revered all life, even in its corrupted forms. The idea of nurturing the blight was anathema to their beliefs. "Not feed it," Aiden corrected. "Contain it. Give it a purpose beyond consumption." He knew it was a long shot, a radical departure from everything he'd tried before. But it was their only hope. Rhea hesitated, torn between her people's traditions and her growing faith in Aiden. Then, she took a deep breath, her iridescent skin flashing a resolute blue. "I will help you," she said, her voice unwavering. The plan was audacious, to create a biodome, a contained environment where the blight could thrive, fueled by a synthetic nutrient solution. It was a monumental task, requiring the combined resources and expertise of both humans and xylosans. Aiden led the effort, his bioalchemy and Rhea's understanding of Teros's ecosystem working in concert. As they worked side by side, their bond deepened. He found himself drawn to her quiet strength, her unwavering belief in him, even when he doubted himself. He confessed his fears, his guilt over the loss of his parents, a wound he'd carried for so long. She listened patiently, her touch a silent comfort. One day, as they worked late into the night, their hands brushed. He hesitated, remembering his initial fear, the uncertainty of their biological differences. But she didn't flinch. Instead, her cool fingers intertwined with his. It was a moment of profound intimacy, a silent acknowledgement of their growing love. The contact sent a thrill through him, a spark of connection in the midst of the chaos. The biodome neared completion, a shimmering oasis of hope in the blighted landscape. But time was running out. The blight's attacks intensified, pushing the human colony to the brink of collapse. Elder Gray, his face etched with desperation, issued an ultimatum: abandon the project, focus on repairing their defenses, or face expulsion from the colony. Aiden refused. He'd made his choice. He wouldn't abandon Rhea, wouldn't betray the future they were building together. He knew his decision would have consequences, but he was ready to face them. The blight launched a final, devastating assault, targeting the human colony's main life support system. Aiden and Rhea raced to defend it, their combined skills barely holding back the encroaching darkness. In the midst of the chaos, Elder Gray appeared, his face pale with fear. He'd come to help, to fight alongside the man he'd condemned, the alien he'd feared. It was a turning point. The humans and xylosans, united by a shared threat, fought as one. The biodome, activated at the last moment, drew the blight away from the colony, offering a new source of sustenance, a new purpose. The attack subsided, the ravaged landscape slowly returning to an uneasy peace. In the aftermath, Aiden and Rhea stood hand in hand, surveying the transformed Tyros. Their love, once a quiet refuge, had become a symbol of hope, a bridge between two worlds. They knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. They faced condemnation from both their peoples, their union a challenge to ancient prejudices. The Blight, though contained, remained a threat, a constant reminder of the fragility of their peace. But as they looked into each other's eyes, they saw not just love, but a shared determination to build a future together, a future where humans and Xylosounds could coexist, not just as allies, but as a family. The music of their lost worlds echoed in their hearts, a melody of longing and belonging, a testament to the enduring power of connection in a world forever changed. It was a start. The dust had settled, a fine grey film coating the ravaged landscape. The Blight, contained within the shimmering biodome, pulsed with a subdued luminescence, a caged beast reluctantly accepting its new prison. Tyros, scarred and broken, was beginning to heal. Patches of green pushed through the blighted earth, a testament to the planet's resilient spirit. Aiden sat by the oasis, the once hidden sanctuary now a shared space between humans and Xylosounds. The air, still tinged with the Blight's chemical tang, was cleaner, sweeter. He held Rhea's hand, her cool, smooth skin a stark contrast to his own rough, calloused fingers. The touch, once a source of apprehension, now brought a sense of peace, a quiet refuge amidst the storm that had ravaged their worlds. It worked, Rhea whispered, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the dappled sunlight filtering through the newly revived foliage. You did it, Aiden. You healed our world. He shook his head, a wry smile touching his lips. We did it, he corrected, squeezing her hand. Together. He thought of the sacrifices they'd made, the choices that had irrevocably altered their lives. He'd abandoned his dream of returning to Earth, a dream he'd clung to for so long, for a future he couldn't have imagined, a future with her. But their victory came at a price. Elder Grey, though grateful for Aiden's ingenuity, couldn't forgive his betrayal. He saw Aiden's alliance with Rhea as a rejection of humanity, a dangerous alliance with an alien race. The human colony, though safer now, remained wary, their fear of the Xylosounds amplified by the recent Blight attack. Rhea faced similar opposition from her own people. The elders, though impressed by the biodome's success, condemned her relationship with Aiden, a human, a symbol of the very technology they believed had poisoned Tyros. They saw her love as a betrayal of their traditions, a dangerous compromise of their symbiotic way of life. They don't understand, Rhea whispered, her skin flashing a worried green. They see only difference, not connection. Aiden brushed his fingers against her cheek, a gesture of comfort, of love. We'll show them, he murmured, his voice filled with a quiet conviction. We'll build a bridge between our worlds, a bridge built on trust, on respect, on love. Their love, once a quiet refuge, became a symbol of their defiance, a beacon of hope in a world still shadowed by fear and prejudice. They worked together, tirelessly, to rebuild the ravaged landscape, to foster understanding between their peoples. Aiden shared his bioalchemy, helping the Xylosounds adapt to the changing environment. Rhea, in turn, taught the humans the Xylosan way of symbiosis, a deeper connection to Tyros' resilient spirit. One evening, as they sat by the oasis, the music Aiden had shared with her, a melody of longing and belonging, drifted through the air. Rhea leaned against him, her cool skin a welcome contrast to the lingering heat of the day. It speaks of home, she whispered, her voice a melodic chime. He smiled, his heart swelling with a love that transcended the vastness of space, the chasm between their species. Home is where the heart is, he murmured, his lips brushing against her iridescent hair. He knew their journey had just begun. The Blight, contained but not eradicated, remained a threat. The prejudices of their peoples, deeply rooted in fear and mistrust, wouldn't vanish overnight. But as he held Rhea close, her hand intertwined with his, he felt a sense of hope, a belief in the power of their love to heal the wounds of their world, to build a future together, a future where humans and Xylosounds could not only coexist, but thrive. It was a fragile peace, a nascent love blooming in the heart of a poisoned Eden. But it was a start. And in the vast, unforgiving expanse of the universe, that was all that mattered.